This is Lomochrome Turquoise. This is a C41 color negative film that's known for its unconventional colors. Now, this is not a brand new film, but instead it's actually a reissue. So when Lomography announced that they were bringing back Lomochrome Turquoise, I immediately pre-ordered 5 rolls. When this film arrived, I went to work and I started shooting. While I never shot this stuff before, I shot a lot of Lomochrome Purple, so I assumed that the whole shooting experience would be similar. And with that misplaced confidence, I ended up shooting all 5 rolls before I even developed a single roll. If you look at the negative, it looks fine, but if you look at the scans, it's underwhelming. Like Lomochrome Purple, I was expecting a wash of wacky colors. I mean, if you look at the packaging, like the sky is orange and everything else is just washed in turquoise, but I didn't really get much of that. There are some small things that look a little weird, like the stop sign, but even though the colors are slightly off, without any context, it doesn't really look that different. To understand why and what's going on, let me show you the next roll. I trichromed this and developed this in black and white chemistry, and to pile on, I accidentally underdeveloped this as well. Now if you're new here, I like to trichrome stuff. If you're unfamiliar with the concept, I made a whole video about it, but the quick and dirty is you can shoot a scene with a red, green, and blue filter on black and white film. Combine that in post and you could create a color photo. So for each scene, I shot 3 frames with a red, green, and blue filter. And if you trichrome this film, it comes out looking normal. There's no weird color shifting. So what's going on? This is going to be a really watered down explanation, but essentially color film is made up of several layers. The 3 important layers being the red, green, and blue sensitive layers. When developed, they leave behind a color dye, and the color dye is complementary to the color layer. So a cyan dye is left in the red layer, magenta dye left in the green layer, and yellow dye left in the blue layer. And this is what creates a negative color image. Now, the secret sauce of Lomo Turquoise is that they swap 2 of those color dyes around. So the red sensitive layer forms yellow dyes instead, and the blue sensitive layers form cyan dyes. Going back to the first roll I shot, I took a picture of a color test chart, and this is what it looks like. Now here's what the test chart should look like. The 3 important squares you have to look at are these 3, the red, green, and blue squares. With turquoise, the squares are now blue, green, and then red. What this all boils down to is that the red and the blue channels are swapped. It's actually not that hard to unswap these channels in post. If you swap the 2 channels around, you get a normal looking shot. And it works the other way. This was shot on Ektar. If I swap the red and blue channels, that's DIY Lomo Turquoise. And if you go back to the original shot and instead swap the green and blue channels, you get DIY Lomo Purple. Now this isn't a perfect one-to-one recreation, but it gets pretty close. I ended up shooting a lot of greenery and neutral tones, colors that aren't widely affected by the channel swap. If the lighting was warmer or if there was a clear blue sky, I think it would have helped out a lot. Unlike Lomo Purple, where the colors are just obviously weird all the time, with Lomochrome Turquoise it seems like the effect could be surprisingly subtle. For this next roll, I bleach bypassed it. It has higher contrast, the highlights are completely blown out, and it definitely has a look to it. It kind of has some of this orangey kind of cast to it, which is nice, I guess, to see. But overall, I mean, I'm not really a big fan of how this turned out. But yeah, it is what it is. This was cross-processed in E6. If you want to shoot C41 film in E6, you're going to need to overcompensate, either by overdeveloping or overexposing by about 2 stops. In this case, I decided to overexpose it by 2 stops, so I shot this as if it was 100 speed. When processing normally, this film doesn't have a traditional orange base. I'm only bringing this up because when it was cross-processed, it has kind of that orange base color to it. And I'm pretty sure this actually isn't the base. I think that's just how the film looks, but you know, I thought it was interesting to point out. At the very least, I finally got that orange sky I was hoping for. And like the other shots, there are some small things that are kind of off, but it's all subtle. It basically looks like I accidentally shot a roll of color film with the orange filter on it. finally, I decided to redscale the last roll. Normally, I don't like redscale, partly because I don't like the results, but mostly because I suck at shooting it. But surprisingly, I like these results the best. It might be a low bar considering everything else was kind of disappointing, but just by itself, I really like the look. Turquoise scale has this weird washed out look with little hints of color here and there, and it kind of works for me. I think if sadness was a film stock, like this is what it would look like. And if you're curious what the test chart looks like, here it is. There's really no surprises here. A lot of sensitivity in the red channel and a little in the green and virtually none in the blue. Now, one thing I noticed about all of these rolls is that every single roll I shot had a light leak on the edge. Usually this happens when the backing paper is loose, but I've shot enough 120 film to know how to properly load and unload a camera. And every roll looks like it was wound perfectly. Some of these rolls were unloaded in broad daylight, others in a dimly lit room, but they all had light leaks. I'm not sure what's causing it, but I thought it's worth bringing up. Some of the subsequent rolls I've shot that weren't Lomo film, no light leaks. Anyway, this is sort of an incomplete look at Lomo Turquoise. I know I kind of missed the main points, and I would like to shoot this stuff again knowing what I know now, but in the meantime, you could use this as a guide on what not to do when shooting this film.